All right, welcome to episode 3 of Paddle of the Week. This week, we've got a stacked lineup of paddles to break down. Some new, some I've been testing for weeks, and one is starting to emerge as my go-to for when I want to dial in my game. As always, I put these paddles through competitive games, fun games with friends, and drilling sessions, to see which ones delivered and which ones fell flat. Now, if you're new here, here's how this works. Each week, I test a bunch of paddles, run them through real game situations, and at the end, I pick one as my paddle of the week. There are no strict rules. Sometimes it's a brand new release, sometimes it's an older paddle I decided to revisit, and sometimes it's just one I reached for and really enjoyed playing this week. A quick heads up, there won't be a paddle of the week next week because I'll be out of town for spring break. But when I get back, I'll have even more paddles to test and talk about. So let me know in the comments, what paddles do you want to see in a future episode? Are there any from this list you want me to keep diving into? Drop your thoughts below and let's get into it. Before we dive in, a quick shout out to this episode's sponsor, Joola Pickleball. They make some of the best overgrips out there with tons of color options and just the right amount of tack. Plus they've got dry grips that won't slip on those hot, sweaty days. And if you're a gear tinker like me, they've got tungsten, speed caps, and much more. Check them out at boatipickleball.com and use my code MPB to save some cash and support this channel. All right, now let's talk paddles. First up is the Honolulu Pickleball J2K. This is not the J2K Plus, this is the OG J2K. I needed finesse and control in league play this week, and the Honolulu Pickleball J2K delivered, plus a little extra pop. This paddle isn't just about resets and soft play, it's got just enough power to make it a true all-court beast. The pure Kevlar face provides a controlled feel, but not too soft, and the 16mm core and paddle shape expands the sweet spot, making resets, dinks, and counters feel smooth and on target. But what really stood out? It played fast, stable, and confident, with no shortage of power when I needed it. I hadn't picked this up in a month, and it was like I never put it down. Where does it shine? Resets and blocks feel automatic. The J2K absorbs pace well without launching balls unpredictably, making defensive play and counters much easier to manage. Of course, that variability comes from you, not the paddle. It's one of those paddles that gives you good feedback without feeling harsh, so you always have confidence in your shots. Whether I was blocking hard drives or dumping a soft reset back into the kitchen, the paddle felt consistent, or rather, I felt consistent with it. Dinks are easy to keep low and unattackable. The Kevlar face grabs the ball just enough to provide control without making touch shots feel sluggish. I could take pace off the ball when I needed to, and in a fast dink battle, the paddle's responsiveness helped out, or didn't get in the way of an attack at the right moment. It's soft when you need it, but it doesn't feel dead. Hand speed felt exceptional. The J2K is a light swinging paddle, making it fast in hands battles and quick to react in counters. At the kitchen, it played with a level of speed and maneuverability that helped me stay on top of exchanges. The paddle moves where you want it to without any sluggishness, and that's a huge advantage when quick reactions determine the point. It's an all-court weapon. If you need finesse, it's there. If you need control, it's dialed in. But what makes it stand out is that it doesn't leave you hanging when you need to go on offense. It's not a pure power paddle, but there's enough pop to take control when the opportunity is there. From the baseline, and if executed properly, drives had pace and accuracy, and I could place serves exactly where I wanted to without feeling like I was losing control. It's not a paddle that will add power for you, but if you generate your own pace, the J2K responds with a stable, controlled power that makes aggressive play more precise. I could step in, drive the ball, and trust that it would do exactly what I expected, well, most of the time. At the kitchen, it rewarded smart attacks. To be clear, 90% of the outcomes are the result of my play. It's not a magic paddle, but I had a much easier time keeping the ball low and unattackable with the J2K, and it has enough pop to finish points. Speed ups felt sharp, dinks felt great, and countering in hand battles felt effortless. The paddle let me play on my terms without fear of accidentally popping the ball up, and absorbing pace when I wanted to slow things down, and responding with sharp, controlled aggression when I needed to attack. For a paddle built around control and finesse, it packs a surprising all-court punch, which is exactly why I reached for it when I needed to dial in my game. The J2K is available at 808pickle.com, and you can save $20 with my code MPBK. Next up, and for the third week in a row, is the Thrive Smoke. The Thrive Smoke is a 14.5 millimeter thermoform paddle designed for players who want stability, plow through, and a clean, powerful response. It's not the kind of paddle that just easily hands you power. You have to put in the work, but once you do, it rewards you with a solid connected feel that makes offensive play feel controlled and intentional. It's not the kind of paddle that just hands you power. You have to put in the work, but once you do, it rewards you with a solid, connected feel that makes offensive play feel controlled and intentional. I've been saying this for 3 weeks now, that the swing weight is just a bit too much for me, and I feel it in fast exchanges. It's not slow, I'm slow with it, and it's not the paddle that's going to give you effortless hand speed either. The weight distribution leans into stability over maneuverability, and that's reflected in how it plays. It stays solid on contact, holds its line on blocks, and doesn't twist too much in your hands on counters. The Smoke's core design is built around a macro-charged polypropylene structure with a larger 10 millimeter honeycomb cell that helps reduce weight while keeping the paddle firm and stable. The result is a paddle that plays dense and powerful with a controlled pop that feels precise instead of unpredictable. Drives feel heavy and forceful. The Smoke rewards full swings, and when I stepped into the ball, it delivered clean power that made it easy to pressure opponents. It doesn't have that trampoline-like pop that some power paddles have, but it still gives strong put-away potential without feeling hard to control. Punch volleys are quick, direct, and not unpredictable. This is where the paddle's denser feeling build really comes into play. Even against hard-hit shots, the paddle holds firm, letting you redirect and counter without worrying about stability issues. The ball comes off the face with plenty of speed, and there's enough weight behind it to drive through punches with a flick and not much extra effort. Defensive play is solid, but requires some precision. The Smoke isn't the most forgiving paddle when it comes to resets and touch shots, and I had to stay focused when absorbing pace or else the ball would jump off more than I wanted. It's not super stiff or unresponsive, but it's also not a paddle that erases mistakes for you. If you like a paddle that gives immediate feedback and rewards good technique, it might be a good fit. If you need something that takes pace off the ball and slows things down effortlessly, you might find this a little demanding and need to look elsewhere. Dinks and drops feel clean and connected. Despite being a power-leaning paddle, the Smoke isn't overly bouncy, which means touch shots feel precise rather than jumpy. It took me a little time to dial in my softer game, but once I did, I felt fully in control of placement without having to hold back. So where does it sit in my lineup? If you like a paddle that gives strong putaways, a connected feel, and a solid defensive response, the Smoke checks those boxes. It's not effortless to use. You have to be deliberate with your shots, but if you put in the effort, it rewards you with stable and consistent power and performance across the board. It's not my main paddle, but I'm keeping it in the mix because it does certain things really well, and I think some players will really like what it has to offer. If you prioritize stability, plow through, and controlled power over hand speed, it's worth checking out. Next up, and also on the list for the third straight week, is the Franklin C45 14mm. This paddle has been in my bag for weeks now, and the more I play with it, the more I appreciate what it brings to the table. It's a 14mm thermoform paddle that offers a strong mix of power, speed, and I want to emphasize speed and control, but what really sets it apart is how it plays once it's dialed into your playing preferences. Out of the box, it's extremely light and extremely unstable, which had me questioning if it was really going to work for me. In stock form, it didn't, and I got really frustrated with how it played. Everything about it was just too light and my timing was way off. But after adding some weight, the C45 completely transformed. Now it's a fast, offensive weapon that still holds its own in softer play. So where does it shine? The C45 plays quick in the hand, making it easy to react in fast exchanges at the kitchen. The lighter build allows for sharp counters and flicks, but what really stands out is how much easier this power level is to control compared to other power paddles. It's not one of those trampoline core paddles where the ball explodes off the face unpredictably. Instead, the power profile is a bit more consistent. You get exactly or nearly there what you put in. Spin performance is solid. The textured face grips the ball well, adding enough bite for topspin drives, rolls, and spin slicey shots. It's not a spin-first paddle, but it gives you plenty of grip to shape shots and add a variety to your game. Punch valleys and hands battles feel sharp and explosive. Once I added weight to stabilize it, the paddle became a lot more forgiving in those quick exchanges. It's not one of the paddles I trust most for counterattacks. It's fast enough to get into position and has enough pop to put pressure on your opponents. Serves and drives feel crisp and aggressive, but the best part is that I don't feel like I have to hold back to keep the ball in play. Some power paddles can feel too hot, but the C45 stays controlled enough that I can swing fully without worrying about overshooting. So what makes it really stand out? What I really like about the C45 is that it feels like a power paddle that doesn't force you to change your game. Some power paddles demand extra adjustments to handle their explosiveness, but this one plays fast and aggressive and controlled all at once. That said, it needs some weight to feel complete. Go into this purchase with eyes wide open. You probably won't like its stock because the stock setup feels a little too light and twitchy, and I wouldn't recommend playing it without at least some minor adjustments. But once dialed in with some Bodhi tungsten tape, it delivers a nice blend of speed, power, and control that works well for aggressive players who still want to play a balanced game. It's been my go-to for weeks now, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Well, maybe. We'll talk about that in a bit. Next up, and for the second week in a row, is the Standout Pickleball CF4. The Standout Pickleball CF4 continues to be one of the most intriguing paddles I've tested recently. It blends power, stability, and control in a way that feels unique. There's good pop and power, but you need to dial in the power profile of the CF4 because you will get more in power and pop than you were expecting. That can make it a bit more difficult to control. This is an elongated paddle, but it doesn't have that heavy head-loaded feel that some elongated designs suffer from. Instead, it moves quickly in hand, making it easier to maneuver in fast exchanges, while still offering stability and put-away power. So what makes the paddle stand out? The non-linear power profile is one of the biggest talking points. The harder you swing, the more energy the paddle gives back. It's not bouncy or overly springy, but when you accelerate through a shot, you feel the paddle activate and deliver that extra pace. That means drives, flicks, and counters feel fast and intentional rather than jumpy or unpredictable. Think Super Ball, but not that extreme. Punch volleys and quick exchanges feel strong, but again, it takes time to dial in the control part of this paddle. There's enough pop to win hands battles at the kitchen, but the paddle doesn't play so hot that it's tough to control. If anything, the power ramps up when you need it, but stays measured when you're playing softer. Where the CF4 really excels is in stability. Mishits don't get punished as much as they do on some other power paddles. And the paddle feels forgiving across the entire face, even on off-center shots. The CF4 holds up well, allowing for more consistency in high-pressure situations. Look, at the risk of another run-on statement, it takes time to dial in the power profile of this paddle. From the baseline, drives feel smooth and connected. The power is there when you need it, but it's not overwhelming. It's good. Spin production is respectable, so you can shape shots and add variety, though it's not a pure spin-first paddle. At the kitchen, it delivers a solid mix of control and offense. Drops and resets feel clean, and when it's time to speed up, the paddle responds with enough put-away punch to keep you on offense. It's not as soft as a pure control paddle, but it's also not a full-blown power weapon. It sits comfortably between the two. The CF4 is one of the better balanced power-leading paddles I've tested, and that's what makes it stand out. Pun intended. It's balanced and powerful when you need it, but it's also controlled enough to handle the soft game, assuming you put in the time to dial it in. It does take some time to get used to that non-linear power profile, but once you're dialed in, it rewards aggressive play without sacrificing too much control. If you want a paddle that gives you a mix of put-away power and stability and some forgiveness, the CF4 is a strong option to consider. Still one of my favorite paddles to keep in the mix. And you can check it out at standoutpickleball.com and save 10% with my code MPB. All right, next up is the Proton Flamingo. The Proton Flamingo is one of the most well-balanced paddles I've played, delivering strong power, lively pop, and a quick head-light feel. It's built with edge foam technology and a propulsion-style core similar to what Joola introduced in its 3 lineup. But it manages to carve out its own identity with a feel that's both firm and explosive in a punchy way, yet controlled. This paddle leans into the power category, but it doesn't go overboard. It has plenty of pop, but it's not one of those uncontrollable, jumpy paddles that forces you to hold back on your shots. The power is there when you need it, but the response stays consistent, meaning you don't get random trampoline-like rebounds that send the ball flying past your targets. If the CF4 from Standout is nonlinear, again, think Super Ball as an extreme example, this power profile is linear, meaning what you put into it is what you get, so there's little to no unpredictability. Despite the fast offensive playstyle, the paddle feels head light, making it quick in the hands and easy to maneuver. That said, I noticed some twisting on off-center shots, which affected stability. A 5-inch 4-gram tungsten strip on the neck solved that issue for me, giving it a more planted, stable response in high-speed play. Now let's break down some early performance observations. First, power and pop. The Flamingo is one of the more controlled, power-leaning paddles I've played. The pop is sharp, but it doesn't feel excessive, making drives, flicks, and putaways clean and intentional. To be clear, it's not a control paddle. Next, let's talk about the sweet spot and forgiveness. The Flamingo is slightly smaller than some of its direct competitors like the new Joola Perseus 4, but it's still generous enough to provide consistent performance across the face. Mishits feel more noticeable due to the firm face and the lower twist weight, but they don't punish you excessively. The full face of the Flamingo isn't a giant sweet spot, but the sweet spot still seems like a nice size. Next, on spin potential. At first I went with a word that describes a paddle surface as gritty. But later I changed that assessment to gritté, my phrase for excellent grit. The textured surface grips well, and while I haven't run the spin numbers yet, I don't think it's going to take the top spot of the true foams in my paddle database, but it still gives enough bite for topspin drives and slice shots. Next, onto the swing weight and overall handling. The head-light balance makes it feel quicker than expected, but the paddle still carries enough mass for plow-through power. Out of the box, the twist weight felt low, but after adding tungsten, the stability improved significantly. The Flamingo is one of the most nicely balanced paddles I have played. So, some final thoughts. The Proton Flamingo is a high-performance, power-leaning paddle and at a premium price. That keeps things balanced, blending pop, control, and quick handling into a single package. It's firm and responsive, rewarding aggressive players who rely on fast attacks and precise shot placement. It needed some weight adjustments to fully stabilize, but once dialed in, it played fast and explosive and controlled, which is a rare combination in the power-leaning category. If you're looking for a paddle that brings power without sacrificing too much control, this one absolutely delivers. And it looks pretty cool too. I don't have a discount code at Proton yet, but I'll put a QR code up on the screen where you can buy the paddle from Pickleball Central, and it should save you some money. Or you can click the link in the description. Next up is the Joola Pro Perseus 4 14mm. This paddle feels nothing like the previous Joola models and plays very different from the 16mm version. The first thing you notice is density. The 14mm has an incredibly dense, solid feel, something that reminds me of the carbon true foam paddles in terms of how compact and firm it plays. It's fast and crisp and aggressive, making it a top-tier weapon for counterattacks, drives, and putaways. The power and pop are immediate. The ball jumps off the face quickly, making it a dangerous paddle in hands battles and aggressive play. It has a springier feel on contact, which adds to the sense of explosiveness. If you like a paddle that reacts fast and rewards aggressive shots, this might be exactly what you're looking for. But with that added pop comes less dwell time. The ball doesn't sit on the face as long, meaning touch shots, resets, and dinks require a bit more precision and focus. If you rely on a slower, softer game, this paddle won't do the work for you. You have to be fully in control of your finesse shots to keep them clean. Now let's talk about handling and stability. In hand, the 14mm feels head light, making it quick to maneuver and easy to react with in fast exchanges. It moves well in hands battles, counters, and flicks, but out of the box, I noticed some twisting on mishits. I fixed that by adding a 5-inch 4-gram tungsten strip up the neck, and that completely changed the feel. Stability improved, the sweet spot felt more forgiving, and the paddle became more controllable. One interesting takeaway is that this version was the more popular choice among the players in my playtest, even those who don't typically prefer thinner paddles. That speaks to how well balanced it is for a 14mm build and how much controlled explosiveness it offers. Despite the structural and design updates, I have a hard time telling the difference in raw power between the 4 and the 3S series, at least in how it plays for me. It still delivers high-end power, but it feels denser and more connected, which I really like. If you like the 3S models but wanted something less jumpy, more predictable, and better balanced, this is exactly the paddle you're looking for. It plays smoother, more confident, and with fewer trade-offs. One of Joola's best offerings to date. Right now, I'm really enjoying the 14mm version, especially after adjusting the weight. It's already a contender for Paddle of the Week next week, and I find myself reaching for it more than I expected. If you want explosive power, a dense and direct feel, and a fast offensive weapon, this is one of the best options out there. Eventually, my code MPB will take 10% off this purchase, but Joola doesn't do discount codes around launch time. However, if you do use the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen, it will take you to Joola's website where you can purchase the paddle on March 4th. And using one of these links will also give me a kickback and support my channel. All right, next up is the paddle of the week, and that goes to the Joola Pro Perseus 4 16mm. This is what the original Gen 3 Joola paddles should have been. It plays incredibly smooth with a level of control that makes every shot feel good. And I'm playing it stock with no added weight. The power is still there, but it's much more manageable than the 14mm. Instead of a quick, jumpier pop, you get a smoother energy transfer, meaning you can swing more confidently and trust that the ball will go exactly where you're intending it to go. The dwell time is very good. The ball stays on the face just long enough to help you shape your shots, slow down fast exchanges, and reset with some precision. The extra dwell time also makes the spin potential very good. Rolling drives, flicks, and cut shots feel effortless, with the ball dipping and bending in a way that's both reliable and repeatable. The sweet spot is noticeably larger on the 16mm compared to the 14mm. Mishits feel less punishing, and even when you're caught reaching, the paddle keeps the ball on a good path. The 16mm feels more like the mod in terms of that hollow, thuddy feel than the 14mm does, which feels and plays much more dense like the carbon true foams. It has a little more swing weight, which translates to more stability, but slightly slower hand speed. If you're used to a faster, lighter paddle, you might need some adjustment time here. But the trade-off is that blocks and counters feel far more controlled, and the paddle doesn't twist as much on off-center shots. And I'm still playing the 16mm stock. No weight, just a Bodhi overgrip. This version reminds me more of a Joola Mod TA15 than it does the 3S, but it's far more balanced and controlled. The 4 16mm plays like a refined, tamer version of the mod. The ball comes off in a similar way, but it's nowhere near as hot. But that's a good thing, and it makes the paddle more versatile, more controllable, and more enjoyable to play, and even easier to handle in real games. If this is where power is going, I'm totally on board. And if you're looking for a power paddle that still lets you slow the game down when needed, this 16mm is a good choice. It has all the offensive tools, but provides a level of forgiveness that makes it easier to use across more situations. And that's exactly why the Joola Pro Perseus 4 is my paddle of the week. Eventually, my code MPB will take 10% off the purchase of this paddle, but again, Joola doesn't do discount codes as new paddles launch. However, if you use the link in my description or scan the QR code down there, it will take you to Joola's website where you can purchase the Joola Pro 4 16mm on March 4th. And using one of these methods will give me a kickback and support this channel. That wraps up episode 3 of Paddle of the Week. This was a stacked lineup, and as always, I appreciate everyone tuning in and being part of the conversation. Now, quick reminder, there won't be a Paddle of the Week next week since I'll be out of town for spring break. But don't worry, I'm bringing a stack of paddles with me, so I'll be getting in plenty of game time to learn more about those paddles. That means when we're back, I'll have more insights, playtests, and impressions to share. So here's what I need from you. Drop a comment below. What paddles do you want to see in future episodes? Are there any from this week that you want me to dive deeper into? Which ones do you think deserve another round of testing? Let me know. I read every comment, and your feedback helps shape what I test and review next. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss any updates on episodes like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.